Hello and welcome to Capital Ideas Live, the video version of the magazine about doing business in Moscow. I'm John Harrison.
John's questions are answered by the most hotly debated department in the Moscow government. Nobody likes it when their car gets towed away. A project with a long history. Who's reviving the Silk Road?
Transfer the products from China to Europe. It will be not more than 3 weeks.
Watch it now. Capital Ideas Live.
Now, so far in these programs, we've been talking about investing into all sorts of different areas in Moscow, including health, including lifestyle, including business. But one thing we haven't been talking about, we haven't even approached, is the whole subject of transportation. And without a developed transportation infrastructure, investment into any of these things is pointless. Now, Moscow, like any other major city in the world, is struggling with transportation problems. Our next report is what exactly Moscow is doing to come to terms with these problems.
Over 4 million vehicles are registered in Moscow, another 2 million in the Moscow region. The Center for the Organization of Transport Flows monitors the situation on Moscow's roads. According to the center, just 500,000 vehicles are enough to clog the city up with jams. There is only one way out of the situation, to the displeasure of automobilists. In all major cities, in order to simply allow people to live and to travel normally, both in the city and in residential areas, you simply have to remove the cars. On the one hand, you have to make it possible for people to move around on foot, to make it a pleasant experience, to make it normal at least. On the other hand, you have to give them the opportunity to use public transport. Public transport in the capital means the metro, buses, trolleybuses and trams. Over the last 6 years, 24 metro stations have opened, and over the next 3 years, another 60 will be built. The railway system, which 100 years ago surrounded Moscow, is now in the center of the city, and it's being integrated with the metro. Every day, the Moscow Central Circle is used by 400,000 passengers.
Следующая остановка – станция метро Преображенская площадь.
Overland transport is developing just as quickly. In the city of Moscow, 120 low-floor Vityaz M model trams have been put into action. They differ from their predecessors, firstly, in that they're roomier. Secondly, they're more economic in terms of energy consumption. And they're more comfortable for passengers. The car hasn't disappeared from Moscow's public transport system, however. Over 2,500 cars are employed in car-sharing systems. Every day, 630,000 people continue to use taxis. The city is continually on the move and doesn't stand still for a second.
Here I am sitting next to the assistant head of the department of the Moscow Traffic Control Department. As is probably somewhere where very few foreigners have actually been. So I'm very privileged to be here. Alexander, can you start off by telling us, please, what your department does?
We're creating projects for how vehicles are going to move about. We're putting up signs, doing markings. The next sphere is going to be a photo and video registering system for administrative violations, meaning that we're following the rules. That's speed cameras which track speeding violations and violations of the highway code. And they protect lanes that are reserved for public transport.
I think that you and your colleagues must be some of the most unpopular people in Moscow, because you're the ones who fine Muscovites for leaving their cars where they shouldn't do and evacuate their vehicles and so on. How do you cope with all that?
All over the world, people don't like it when they get towed. Especially after a long period when there have basically been no rules. It's hard to believe it now, But in Moscow, the cars were just piled up on top of one another, and they packed the pavements. They were in rows 2 or 3 deep. Even the cars had no room for maneuver, let alone pedestrians. Getting by with a pram or in a wheelchair was impossible. Now the centre has been transformed radically. Of course, people have to get used to those changes. I myself experienced a dissonance. This is way too strict, I told myself. But you have to observe the rules. The rules make sense and they're reasonable. We've been to a lot of countries and cities around the world, and we can see that the rules can be a lot stricter.
Is there a danger that you're simply forcing drivers out of Moscow?
The automobile at present is a defining trend in modern civilization, which provides an incomparable comfort level in comparison with the alternatives. We know that perfectly well, and we try and get the comfort levels of public transport on a par with that of cars. We're really helped by technical progress and modern pursuits in this. A lot of young people prefer public transport because they can stay on the internet the whole time. They can read the latest news, hang out in chats. That's very important, and it means that the time spent on public transport isn't lost from their lives. If we look into the distant future, everything is going to develop towards driver-free transport. That will really change the situation. A lot of scientists are working on that. English, American, French, Russian, Chinese. The whole world is working on that, and I'm certain that our common work will lead to us being able to carry out a transport revolution. And we'll get a quality of life that for now we can only dream of.
Our next report is about direct involvement of foreigners into the Moscow transport infrastructure.
Moscow is a modern megalopolis that's oriented towards the future. The status of world capital, however, doesn't just entail a packed life, it also entails the problems that prevail in large cities. First and foremost, that concerns transport, and Moscow isn't alone in resolving this problem. Thousands of Russian and foreign experts are already working on introducing new infrastructure. For example, several new metro stations are being built by the China Railway Construction Corporation. For the first time, a foreign company has been brought in to work on Moscow's underground metro system. The conditions have never been better in Moscow for foreign business. The government gives privileges and breaks for 10 years to foreign investors who invest over $5 million, lowering the tax on profits to 10%. There are also special systems for those entering into public-private partnerships. The government of Moscow has worked out a program where it jointly invests money alongside investors. Every day, investors discover new opportunities. Projects are launched which only yesterday appeared to be unrealistic. Developments are carried out in the sphere of pilot-free transport, and next year the first electrobus will be out on Moscow's roads. Today, Russian, Finnish and Chinese developments in this form of transport are being tested. Effectively, it will be a kind of hybrid of the trolleybus and bus, and it will be a very important technical revolution, which will also help us to clear up traffic jams. The entire world is watching how the Russian capital modernizes its transport system. In recent days, the Transport Week was concluded by the walls of the Kremlin, with the participation of transport specialists from many countries. They shared their experience and learned from Moscow.
Of course, Moscow isn't the only city in the world experiencing traffic problems, issues of one kind or another. In fact, Deputy Minister Yevshin said as much in my interview with him. And he also said that Russia's trying to learn, is learning from the experience gained in other countries. And I'm very pleased to be able to talk right now to the General Secretary of the Greek Traffic Organization, Mr. Athanasios Vordas. Now, how is Athens solving these problems? How are you?
We try to close some roads in the center of the city, but that make the problem to the other roads near them bigger. But the better solution is to do new metro lines, not only with public money, but and with private investors. We can do the line, and after that we'll be the operator of the line for some years to take the money back. And I think that it's a good solution. And for Moscow, it's not the better solution is not the buses or the tram which go to the roads near the cars.
Well, from what I can gather from talking to some of the Moscow officials, it's quite a sort of revolutionary time, because they're really, I'm noting they're forcing people, but they're encouraging them to leave their cars behind and to use public transport. And do you have problems? I think in Moscow there is a certain resistance to this. Do you have the same sort of problems in Athens?
It's very big, but we have the same problem.
The same problem.
We spend much of time in our cars, and I think that all we have to understand that it's better to do something else. These hours that we spend in our cars, we have to play with our child or whatever you want.
So this, looking at it from the sort of business perspective then, is this something then you feel that could be something that Greece could work together with Russia on in the future?
Last January, we signed an MOU with RZD and the Greek Railway for all these things. And now I think that RZD will come to Athens to do investments to the Greek Railway, and we take the know-how from RZD, because I think that RZD is the biggest train company in the world, and that is a good time to have relationships, and we will work together to do the railway from China, Russia, and then to Europe. Before 2000 years we have the Silk Road, and now we'll do it again. It's a very big project, but for the companies we'll transfer all the products it's cheaper to transfer by train, but not by sea that we do now.
And quicker, and a lot faster.
Yes.
So it's better, it's good business for everybody.
Yes, now we have to transfer the products from China to Europe. It's about 6 weeks by ships. And if we finish the Silk Road, as we say, it will be not more than 3 weeks.
A school like Sergei Brin's for free. How do Moscow school children study? Where in the Russian capital can you find a real English education? Next time on Capital Ideas Live.
So that's it, that's all we've got time for today. I'm sorry, no more. I hope you found out something interesting about Moscow's transportation infrastructure. Tuning in next week, I'm John Harrison. Goodbye.